The police, upon learning about the Snapchat video, began tracking Sierra's smartwatch and her phone simultaneously. Sierra's blood was found on a motorcycle, as well as zip ties, mace, and a ski mask. When her body was discovered, Sierra had contusions on her left leg, a laceration on her forehead, a broken upper left incisor, and a hairline of fracture inside the back of her skull. Also, her wrists and ankles were bound. Who was Sierra Joughin? What happened to her? Who killed her? Who was the culprit? This is your partner in crime stories. Subscribe and let's move along this mysterious journey ahead. On July 19, 2016, a Tuesday, in the quiet countryside of Fulton County, west of Toledo, Sierra Joughin and her boyfriend, Josh Kalinsky, rode bikes on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Sierra, a 20-year-old student at the University of Toledo, lived with her grandparents in Metamora, Ohio. As the sun began to set, Sierra's mom, Sheila Vocalic, arrived at her parents' house. But something seemed off. Sierra's bedroom light was dark. Sheila, worried because they were close, knew it was unusual for Sierra not to let them know if she planned to be out late. At 10:30 p.m., Josh called Sheila asking if Sierra had returned home. When Sheila said no, Josh grew concerned. He had been trying to reach Sierra through texts and calls, but there was no response, just voicemail every time. With both Josh and Sheila unable to contact Sierra, Sheila decided to call the police and set out to search for her daughter. She explained to the officers that Sierra hadn't returned home after their bike ride earlier in the day. Josh, the last person known to have seen Sierra, was questioned by the police. He recounted their bike ride through rural roads and cornfields, hoping for any clue that might lead to Sierra's whereabouts. Josh shared a Snapchat video he took of Sierra that day. In the video, Sierra was seen happily riding her purple bike, with Josh on his motorcycle beside her. They stayed close until they reached a point on County Road 6, where Sierra said she'd cycle the rest of the way home. Josh, going in a different direction, kissed her goodbye before heading back down the road. This happened around 6:45 p.m., and Josh planned to contact Sierra later. But when he messaged her after getting home, there was no reply. The police, upon learning about the Snapchat video, began tracking Sierra's smartwatch and her phone simultaneously. They searched County Road 6 and the area where Josh last saw Sierra. Noticing some disturbance in a section of the cornfield, they found Sierra's bike a few rows in, with blood on the handlebars. This spot was only half a mile from her home. Alongside her bike, they discovered her sunglasses, as well as another pair not belonging to Sierra, along with a screwdriver and a motorcycle helmet, stained with blood. Despite these findings, Sierra herself was nowhere to be found. The police suspected there had been a struggle and entertained the grim possibility that Sierra might have been abducted. As the police widened their search and spoke to residents nearby, they came across James Worley, residing on a 3-acre property west of Toledo. James operated a small engine repair shop from his home and lived with his mother and brother. When questioned, James acknowledged the area under investigation, mentioning his motorcycle breaking down there earlier that day. He also mentioned losing various items, including a helmet, screwdriver, sunglasses, and fuses. Items that raised suspicion because they matched those found near Sierra's bike. During the trial, the prosecution laid out a compelling case against James, presenting evidence of his disturbing online activities and his proximity to Sierra on the day of her abduction. They revealed that James had used his home computer to search for disturbing content related to rape and forced scenarios just a month before Sierra was taken. The prosecution painted a grim picture, suggesting that after spending the day on pornography sites, James followed Sierra home, eventually cornering her in the cornfield and assaulting her with his motorcycle helmet, resulting in her tragic death. Their case further alleged that James waited in the cornfield with Sierra for around 2 hours until nightfall. They proposed that he leave Sierra in the cornfield, return home on his motorcycle to retrieve his van, and transport Sierra to the makeshift dungeon in his barn. Here, they argued, he bound and gagged her, ultimately leading to her demise. However, the prosecution couldn't definitively detail what transpired inside the barn. They continued, asserting that James subsequently drove to a different location, burying Sierra in a shallow grave in a cornfield 12 miles away from the barn. Incriminating evidence was presented, including Sierra's blood found on James's motorcycle, as well as zip ties, mace, and a ski mask discovered on his property. Additionally, the duct tape recovered had both James's and Sierra's DNA on it. The court also learned of the dungeon on James's property, where various concerning items, such as several pairs of female panties, journals, and maps, were found. Notably, a camera resembling a small camera was also among the discoveries. When questioned about the blood on his helmet, James remained silent. As for the female panties, James claimed they were purchased online from China for amateur pornography shoots, hinting at potential contact with women through websites like Craigslist and Backpage for such purposes. During the trial, Dr. Cynthia Beer, a Lucas County deputy coroner, took the stand to testify about Sierra's autopsy. She described Sierra as 5'4", tall and weighing 122 lbs at the time of her death. Dr. Beer recounted that Sierra's body was discovered with her wrists and ankles bound. She went on to detail the injuries Sierra sustained. Dr. Beer explained that Sierra had contusions on her left leg, a laceration on her forehead, a broken upper left incisor, and a hairline fracture inside the back of her skull. Of particular note was the presence of a foreign yellow object, resembling a dog toy, found in Sierra's mouth. This object was attached to a binding around her neck, obstructing her airways and depriving her brain of oxygen for an extended period, likely leading to her death. Dr. Beer suggested that the object caused Sierra's broken tooth by being forcefully inserted into her mouth. She confirmed that Sierra had not been sexually assaulted. In response to questioning from the prosecutor, Dr. Beer agreed that a hairline fracture in Sierra's skull could have been caused by a motorcycle helmet. Defense attorney Marl Deck began the defense's case by asserting that the prosecution had not met the burden of proving the essential elements of the case beyond a reasonable doubt. He argued that there was no evidence linking James to Sierra. He didn't know her or witness her on the day of the incident. Deck urged the jury to find James not guilty. During the trial, the defense countered the prosecution's case by asserting that the evidence against their client on July 19th was weak. They admitted that James's items were indeed found in the cornfield, but argued that he had left them there earlier when his motorcycle broke down. They pointed out a witness report mentioning a man in red shorts in the cornfield, emphasizing that no red shorts were found despite a thorough police search of James's property. This absence, they contended, raised doubts about James's involvement. Turning to the makeshift dungeon discovered in James's barn, the defense clarified that it was intended as a room for a pornography studio, not as a place for criminal activity. Testimony from Lawrence supported this claim, as he stated he was aware of James's plans for the studio and occasionally watched pornography with him. Lawrence confirmed that James had shown him the panties and discussed opening a casting couch-type pornography studio. The defense highlighted recorded interviews between James and the police, where he expressed his intention to use the panties for amateur pornography shoots. They argued that Sierra's injuries did not definitively link James to her death. In essence, the defense portrayed James as an innocent man caught up in a tragic situation, urging the jury to consider the lack of concrete evidence against him and the plausible explanations provided for the items found on his property. During the trial, the defense argued that the injuries found on Sierra's head could have been caused by various objects, not solely a motorcycle helmet. Dr. Beeser, corroborating this assertion, stated that the possibilities were numerous. They contended that James's helmet was not the definitive cause of Sierra's injuries. At his sentencing hearing, James maintained his innocence and extended condolences to Sierra's family, acknowledging her as a beautiful girl. The defense pleaded for a life sentence instead of the death penalty, citing James's sexual sadism linked with a fetish disorder. However, the judge handed down a death sentence, firmly believing in James's guilt. Further revelations emerged indicating that Sierra's abduction was not James's first offense. In 1990, he violently abducted another woman who was cycling near Toledo. James pleaded guilty to abduction charges and served 3 years in prison. The victim, Robin Gardner, endured physical and emotional trauma from the ordeal, affecting her ability to enjoy outdoor activities. James's execution is set for May 20th, 2025. Sierra's tragic murder spurred the enactment of Ohio Senate Bill 231, which establishes a searchable database of felons convicted of specific violent offenses in the state. This law was passed in December 2018, reflecting efforts to enhance public safety and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. What do you think about this case? Stay tuned, we'll catch you with a new nail-biting crime thriller tomorrow.